Hi, my name's Julie Casey and I'm an educational psychologist in Torfaen in South Wales with a particular interest in the health and wellbeing area of learning and experience, or AOLE, and in social and emotional learning in general. This is the 5th collection of videos in a series of 6 collections, each aiming to share some of the practical ideas from the SEAL and SEAL Cymru materials. So SEAL stands for social and emotional aspects of learning. We've also put together ideas from practitioners and from a whole range of other sources. In particular, of course, we have the entire internet to draw on, which we didn't have so much when the original materials were drawn up. So what we're going to do is we're going to use all of these ideas to look at how they can help you to deliver the health and wellbeing AOLE, area of learning and experience, and to put into practice the whole school approach statutory framework in Wales. The activities and suggestions in this session are based on the SEAL theme Relationships, which is aimed at primary schools, and Anti-bullying, which is aimed at primary and secondary schools. In primary, it's called Say No to Bullying, and in secondary, it's just called Anti-bullying. You probably know you can download all of the SEAL materials for free in the English or Welsh medium, and the website is shown on this slide. And there's more information at the end of the final session. So it's important, I think, to know that this collection focuses on just some of the topics in the relationships theme, topics that aren't covered simply because there wasn't room. In this case, are the social work on the social emotions, so things like embarrassment and jealousy and guilt that arise in the course of social relationships. Another topic that's actually covered every other year in the relationships theme is loss and bereavement, and this is clearly a really important one. So we're covering this in our next collection of videos, looking at changes, as bereavement is the ultimate change, really. So we felt it sat better there. You can find great resources for work on all of these areas on the SEAL community website, but as I say, they're not actually covered in this particular video collection. The work that is described in this collection is intended to be universal, so it's for children across the age range as the first level in a graduated provision map. Of course, it's likely that some of the young people in your setting will require small group or individual interventions, more targeted levels. And in SEAL, those levels are met through the small group materials. Quite often you'll hear them referred to as the silver set on account of the colour of their cover. And we draw your attention in this collection of videos to something called Mini Gold SEAL, which is described, yes, the final section, sharing good practice, but it's actually a 10-week course you can do with individuals who are particularly impacted by ACEs and childhood trauma and attachment issues and so on. So it is important to remember that for many children who have experienced ACEs in their life or have trauma or attachment-based difficulties, many of the areas in this particular theme on relationships can be problematic. These children are likely or may have issues in relation to their relationships. So schools are advised to make sure that this health and wellbeing work links to a whole school approach that's trauma informed and attachment aware. So having said all of that, what we do look at in this collection of videos are ideas linked to, first of all, the importance of good relationships to our mental health and emotional well-being, and what happens when we don't have good relationships in our lives, when we're lonely, and how that impacts on our well-being in a negative sense. The second section considers the other side of relationships, so how these can be unhealthy and unhelpful to us. So we look at the importance of being able to break friends if we feel the relationship isn't positive. And we also look briefly at how this area can lead into work on PSHE and RSE, relationships and sexuality education. Topics such as potential exploitation, risk-taking in relationships, keeping yourself safe in relationships online and IRL, as my children say, for in real life. In SEAL, we tend to call these kind of issues applied SEL, and what they do is they draw on those kind of underpinning skills that are developed through SEAL or SEL, things like, you know, believing yourself to be of value, the ability to recognise and resist peer and other social pressures, and assertiveness skills as well. So then we look at bullying, recognising it, understanding it, and thinking about what we can do about it as targets, bystanders, and crucially, of course, as a whole school. We are required to have a whole school policy in anti-bullying. And then the work moves on to look at stereotypes, prejudice and bullying, discrimination that should be, and how we recognise, understand and do something about how these sorts of negative relationships impact on us and on other people. So those are the key topics for this collection of video. The focus is on family activities. So the SEAL and the SEAL Cymru primary materials provide a set of activities to send home to accompany every theme. The relationships one, not surprisingly, focuses on strengthening family relationships. And it's important to know that these aren't homework tasks in the usual sense, but they're a set of ideas and activities to encourage communication and understanding. And there's the thinking behind this is that children spend much more time at home with their families than they do in school, and it's really important that we do what we can to give consistent messages across the home and school contexts. And of course, it's a hugely difficult area for all educational settings, but the gold set SEAL materials that are shown on this slide do offer at least an opportunity for schools to share the knowledge, skills and understanding that they're developing in pupils with their parents and carers. And they're fun activities and children tend to like doing them. Completely separate to this gold set of materials, there's also a structured programme for schools to run with children and their parents or carers over a limited period, usually around 6 weeks. And this programme is called Family SEAL. So one of the takeaways for this theme is a link to a fantastic implementation guide for Family SEAL. This was put together by Lewisham Local Authority, and you'll be able to find out more about this programme if that's something that you're particularly interested in. Quick recap on how this topic and activities we look at linked to the Welsh context. So, for example, the key themes identified in the whole school approach's statutory framework of belonging, or one of them is belonging, and how that impacts on our emotional health and well-being, and that's a key focus within this theme. The importance of relationships, of course, we know are stressed in the ESTIN thematic report, Healthy and Happy, and within the new framework, and the Welsh Healthy Schools scheme also foreground this particular aspect. When you download the SEAL resources for primary children, you'll see that there are booklets for different ages. So in Wales, it's foundation phase blue, year 3 and 4 yellow, and year 5 and 6 green. And in the English version, the red set covers nursery and reception, and the blue set years 1 and 2. The rest is the same. So the same learning outcomes are covered at each age range, and it's important. A really important point about SEAL and health and wellbeing learning in general is that it's not enough to learn something once. We have to revisit the skills at different ages. It's very easy to think about, in relationships, that the skills, knowledge and understanding that children need at the age of 5 are quite different from those they need to negotiate the tricky relationships of adolescence and the risks that are associated or can be associated with them. So SEAL revisits learning outcomes at regular intervals in what we call the spiral curriculum. Now, within each booklet, there are different types of activities. Some of them are whole school and some of them are class-based. So, for example, we have, going through the slide here, whole school tools. So we've looked at some of those in this section. There's a whole school assembly for primary, really important part that sets the scene, it introduces the key ideas. And that's for children, for staff, and even parents can be invited to that one. We do suggest that the head teacher delivers that one because, you know, it makes sure that they are seen to be heading up this important area of the curriculum. And two, because it keeps them in touch really with, you know, what the nitty-gritty, if you like, of what the children are focusing on in this particular time period while this is being delivered. It also offers a whole school focus for noticing and rewarding, and this is really powerful. You know, you can choose something like we caught I don't know, Lucy choosing doing something to make things fairer, and everybody in the school is looking for the same set of limited set of behaviours, and that's very powerful. So lots of schools choose to reward that in reward assemblies on a Friday, or some schools give out raffle tickets or merit points, whatever system the school uses. In terms of the explicit class sessions, so learning opportunities, there's starters and warm-ups, circle games, rounds, and the activities, which are known as learning opportunities in the booklet. Now, we know, and I'm sorry, I know I bang on about this an awful lot, but we know that the most important thing about learning in this field of health and well-being, social and emotional learning, is that 80% of the learning comes through the reinforcement through the school environment. Only 20% or so is the explicit teaching in the sessions. Crucial, but not sufficient. Necessary, but not sufficient. The modelling is really important by adults. How teachers apply it in all lessons, so in maths, in PE, in drama, and how the school recognises and celebrates those skills. You know, do what I do, not what I say is the watchword for schools here, I think. So in response to that knowledge about what works in terms of teaching in this area, we've included in the booklet and also in these presentations lots of ideas to keep the learning alive, to help children, young people and staff to apply it throughout the school day and beyond. We'll look at some examples from the original materials in the sections that follow, and as well as examples that schools and teachers have developed and used as time has gone on. So we're going to look now at each focus area in turn. Before we do that, you might like to just pause the presentation to consider some of the ideas listed on this slide. These relate to the issue of involving families in children's learning, not just in literacy and academic learning, but in the work the school does around health and emotional well-being. So this, of course, will include all the explicit teaching we look at in these sessions of social and emotional skills.